well, should I like myself? Should I hate myself? And without even knowing, you're now indulging in substance abuse. You're now dealing with relationship issues, domestic violence, divorce, not to mention financial stress. And that's why I wanted to create a space where officers that are active and retired can come to this space, connect, have these open conversations about these issues, and recognize that they are not alone and that it's okay. SHIELD stands for self-help in every law enforcement department, and our vision is to end the suicide epidemic amongst police officers, one wellness retreat at a time. We want to take people away from their normal setting, place them in a whole new setting that just feels like new air, feels like new space, to give you that, okay, this is the start of your new now. If you're interested in supporting SHIELD and learning more about us, scan the QR code, find out who we are, and subscribe to our website so that you can learn more. Thank you all so much, and please help us shield those that protect and serve us every day.
No one asks to have a mental health concern. Everyone is at risk for having a mental health concern. Mental health, to me, means psychological and emotional well-being, but it's more than that. It's also how people think and feel and behave each day. Mental health can affect a person's daily life, both positive and negative, to include relationships and their physical health. Mental health can be about stress and depression. It can be about anxiety. And those things can disrupt a person's life. It could be serious mental health conditions that require more assistance and more support and more understanding. And mental health is also about wellness. It's about happiness, as well as restoring wellness and happiness when a person's not. I see mental health as important because it can affect, if poor mental health can affect somebody's socioeconomic factors, it can affect their social involvement, it can affect their education, could affect their housing, could affect their occupation, could affect their family relationships. So it's important that when I look at mental health, I see the importance of being able to work with others, receiving help, whether it be from a friend, whether it be from a professional, because it's a good thing. It does help, it is effective, and it's important that people connect with each other. Because by connecting and sharing your feelings, your concerns, it helps. It helps when somebody's listening and acknowledging the pain that the other person's going through and understanding what they're going through. And sharing those experiences helps. It helps to let people know that they're not alone. It helps to know that they're validated. It helps to know that they're cared about. So mental health is all-encompassing. It's about our wellness, it's about our happiness, and it's about our future.
Businesses are a reflection of their people. When employees feel happy, supported, and appreciated, business is just better. We're UKG, and we're in the business of building connections through the world's best HR and workforce management solutions. It starts with people. Everything we do is inspired by people. We learn from them, find opportunities to empower them, and look for ways to put smiles on their faces by helping them make the most of what makes them special. Whether it's their talent, their families, or their culture, it's people who power us to create solutions for our customers that reflect our belief that taking care of each other is the best way to connect with each other. It's this belief that drives all 12,000 of our people to build connections with millions of employees in thousands of businesses, in dozens of industries all over the world. We're UKG. We're more than a business. We're a reflection of our people. And what we see really puts the smile on our face. UKG. Our purpose is people.
Welcome, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be your moderator. My name is Michael Francis, and to have this opportunity to moderate the 4th Annual Broward Mental Health Summit of 2021 is truly an exciting moment for me, and again, a privilege and a pleasure. This session is called Connection and Strength, and the topics that we will be covering will be peer support, career options, self-care through others, and with us today, we have a panel of 4 experts in their field that will join us in conversation, real conversation, and sharing information. With that introduction, first let me introduce you to Ms. Aisha McDonald from United Way of Broward. Ms. McDonald is a licensed mental health counselor and a certified trauma expert who has worked in the social services field for over 12 years. She has worked with marginalized populations, specifically those with severe and persistent mental illness, individuals with co-occurring disorders, youth in welfare system, and involuntary hospitalized individuals. Welcome, Ms. McDonald. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Selena King from Broward Behavioral Health Coalition. Ms. King is a system of care manager for Broward managing entity, Broward Behavioral Health Coalition, BBHC. She oversees service for adults receiving mental health and/or substance use service under the managing entity and DCF funding, care coordination, peer programs, respite programs, detoxification, and crisis stabilization, and many other community-related programs. Welcome, Ms. King. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Katie Leonard. Ms. Leonard is a certified recovery peer specialist and a passionate advocate for mental health. Ms. Leonard has worked with Henderson Behavioral Health FACT team and currently works at 9 Muses Drop-In Center and in Mental Health America's Power of Peers program. Welcome, Ms. Leonard. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Deputy Marcus Hall for the Broward Sheriff's Office. Deputy Hall has been in law enforcement for the Broward Sheriff's Office for over 12 years and is a homeless outreach team and crisis intervention team specialist who regularly assists individuals and families in crisis throughout Broward County. Welcome, Deputy Hall, and welcome to all our panel to today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to encourage the viewers that if you have any questions regarding these topics, please feel free to send your questions in, and we will gladly answer your questions. What an amazing panel. Again, thank you for being here with us today. There are so many questions in terms of mental health illness, and everyone's story is different. Some may be similar. But when you talk about a person's truth, and when you talk about a person's journey, how important is it to have a person's testimony and know their story? If I may, Ms. McDonald, start with you.
I think one of the important reasons that it is so necessary to have personal testimonies when it comes to mental health issues and concerns is that it gives other people hope. It gives them hope that there's recovery. It gives them hope that there's a chance for them to get over whatever it is that they're currently going through. And it makes people recognize that you're not always going to be stuck in that pothole, right? And personal testimonies give people the chance to learn what works and what doesn't work, what helped other people get through and what didn't help them get through. And it gives people the chance to be able to find relatability. And I think the title of words is connection, right? That connection that hearing other people's stories gives to others is so important. And that's something that as human beings we crave. When pre-pandemic, we had to drive into the office and traffic was hard and you're at the water cooler, traffic on Broward Boulevard was fire today, and somebody says, oh, the 95. And it gives us that relatability that you understand what I'm going through. You get it. And I may say, oh, you know what? Don't take Broward, take Sunrise. Well, nobody would ever suggest taking Sunrise, but it gives you the chance to share what worked for me that could possibly work for you. Or just to be able to say, yeah, I feel you. And so that's why those personal testimonies are so important. And that's why that connection is so important, because hope isn't something that we always talk about when it comes to mental health. We are really quick to jump to diagnoses and treatment options, but we don't talk about the hope that should always be there and should always be present when it comes to dealing with anything that you're going through.
Well received. Thank you. Ms. Leonard, your thoughts?
I think for me, a person who has struggled with a mental health condition since the age of 14, knowing how lonely and scary that experience can be, not able to look outside of my own storm to see what I can do to get help, to find hope for my experiences, and then navigating the system of care, which is really scary and confusing in itself. So I think when I finally talked to other people that were willing to share, willing to tell me what they had gone through and how they came out the other side, I think it set an example of, okay, if they went through this, if they got through this, then maybe I can too. It was inspiration that there were answers, that I didn't have to be stuck in this storm, that there was somebody that's going to reach out their hand and pull me through the other side. And just knowing that that was a possibility, that my life wasn't over because I had a diagnosis, it changed my life. It changed my mindset as to, okay, well, maybe I will ask for help. Maybe I will try this next step, this next suggestion, because I just saw it from my own two eyes, what a person is capable of, even with something that can seem so scary.
Thank you for sharing. Ms. King, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's important to hear an individual's testimony because we're constantly learning. We all can relate because we're all human. We all could be a family member, a friend, a coworker. We all have a story, and I think sometimes we need to hear the story, the good and the bad, hearing, there could be a crisis now, but sometimes learning about what was life when it wasn't a crisis, what was life when things seemed more normal. And you'd be surprised how when people can talk about maybe a good time in their life, you can see the light, you can see the smile come back. And part of our role is to help those connections, help put the pieces together, because people don't know where to go. Excuse me. They don't know maybe which agencies to call. And it's a horrible feeling to feel lost. I mean, if we're lost in traffic, it's a horrible feeling. The anxiety kicks in. You're wondering, am I going to make it anywhere? So I think that when we're asking someone to share their story, we also have to appreciate and thank them for creating that little bit of trust, because from that little bit of trust, then you can feed on that and then put those connections together.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Deputy Hall.
I think that it's important to hear an individual's testimony, because through listening to someone's testimony, there may be something in that testimony that you can gain and you can learn from, and you can apply it to yourself. And it may be something that you may be going through that individual may have experienced, and by them giving their testimony, they don't even realize that they're actually helping you to navigate through what it is that you are going through.
Well said. Thank you. That feeling of walking alone, that feeling of being hopeless and helpless, not knowing where to turn, not knowing about resources, leads me to this question in reference to peer support. And if I may, Ms. Leonard, let me ask you, in reference to peer support, what is it and how does it work?
Peer support is really a beautiful thing in how simple it can be. People who have experiences with chronic health conditions, either in the brain or the body, it can really wear a person down. And having another person who's walking down that road with you, who understands how hard it can be just to get out of bed, knowing that recovery, it's not a linear journey. There's a lot of back and forth. And I think when you're sitting across the desk of somebody and they hand you a worksheet or a book to read, but they don't make eye contact, or they don't have longer than 10 minutes to spend with you, it can really strip you of hope. When I was coming to a professional looking for answers of what was going on with me, what was wrong with me, and their response was to ask me similar questions. Well, what do you think is going on? Again, a little bit more hope stripped away. When I started going to support groups and hearing people's stories and just them really seeing me, like you were mentioning, as a human being, what my strengths were, words of encouragement, pointing out things that I didn't consider of how I had strength, how I had already exemplified resilience. It mattered more to me than anything else. And I'm not saying that peer support is the only thing a person needs to get healthy again. I think it absolutely needs to be in collaboration with other services. But that's where the magic happens, that it's not a one-size-fits-all answer or approach. It's when all these services come together and work together that really, truly makes movement, makes a difference. And yeah, just having somebody that will look me in the eye and say, I know exactly what you're feeling right now, and I'm so sorry for you. I don't need somebody to fix me or to give me answers. I just wanted somebody to hear me and to really see me. And I got that from peer support. That mattered more to me than anything else, for sure.
Thank you for that. And something, the next question that I'd like to ask you is along the same lines with peer support. How can someone get connected to peer support services?
They're actually popping up all over the world right now. I mean, it is an evidence-based practice, and people are starting to recognize that it does make a difference. I mean, in Broward County alone, there are several opportunities for a person to get connected. 9 Muses Drop-In Center in Lauderhill, Rebels Drop-In Center in Hollywood. Drop-in centers, please. A safe place people can come, can express themselves creatively, can join in on support groups, workshops. It's a learning opportunity, but it's really also just a social connection, being around other people that, won't look at you cockeyed if you say, hey, yeah, I've been in a hospital, or, I have a diagnosis. You just feel normal. You feel like nobody's judging you, that you can be open and honest and even have a bad day and be pissed off and be in somebody's face. I've been kicked out of drop-in centers, but you know what? I was always welcomed back. Always welcomed back. I used to have a problem. I used to have attitude, but you know what? They worked with me. They saw that what was behind that attitude, what was behind those behaviors, was really a scared kid that was in pain. And when I was welcomed back, it was like, okay, I'm okay. I'm not this monster that I thought I was. I'm just a person that needs help. And when other people saw that in me, then I could see it in myself. But I couldn't see it by myself. I needed somebody else to say, hey, let's talk. Come here. When your family doesn't understand you and kicks you out of the house, when you're homeless and on the street, when you have no safe place to go, but I can walk in this door, no appointment necessary, no red tape or hoops to jump through. I can just show up and I'm going to be welcomed with open arms. What? People need to know that exists. People need to know. South Florida Wellness Network is another fantastic organization. A lot of people who really, truly have a heart and want to do everything they can to help. For those that are quarantining or homebound, there's many online platforms and services people can tap into. Warm lines people can call, Seth line 211. People just don't know. So, if you're not sure where to start there. If you're in Broward County, come and see us. Come to my home. Come see my family at 9 Muses, because yeah, we're going to welcome you. We're going to remind you who you are as a human being and what you're truly capable of.
For those who walk this journey and they speak their truth and they're going through crisis, the question that enters their mind based upon the fact and the fear factor of being judged, the stigma, and we hear a lot of trigger words, stigma, crisis, trauma. My question to you is, does peer support make a difference?
Oh, big time. Big time. When you think about crisis intervention services, they're brief. They're immediate. They're there to act. Peer support, I'll spend hours with a person talking about suicide. I don't have to make that call right away. Now, I've heard this from other amazing people. I'm not a clinical professional. I can spend that time to really work through that thought process. And 9 times out of 10, I said this before, a lot of people really don't want to die. They want to escape that pain. They want to escape this feeling of trapped, being stuck in their circumstances. And for a lot of people, just being able to spend those hours processing that, getting it off their chest, hearing options of what they can try, who can be there for them going through that. I mean, a lot of times at the end of those conversations, people don't want to die anymore. They want to try that next thing. I mean, there are times where I do have to make the call, and I'm going to walk with them there. I'm going to let them know that their life matters, that it's important, and that I'll do whatever it takes to make sure that they're safe and they get the help that they need.
There are many, especially now during the pandemic, where this has changed our lives forever. To a lesser degree, to a greater degree, but change it has. Having the ability while you're going through a crisis, when you're feeling at your lowest point, because you do suffer from a precondition of maybe mental illness or something else, that has kind of clouded your judgment along the way leading up to a pandemic. Whether now you've struggled financially, single mom, single dad, you're a parent of an autistic child that may need and require a higher level of care. We're always looking for resources, and to know that we have professionals out here, a lot of them who give from their heart to make people's lives better and give people a safe spot. It's been recognized that there are a lot of people who are crying in silence. And you had mentioned about knowing the value and understanding that there are resources. So with that being said, my next question would be, and it would shift to Ms. King, what are your thoughts in reference to peer support?
Well, there's a lot that goes into peer support, and I want to discuss some of those concepts. Katie touched on those, but there is that mutual understanding, that mutual respect, creating that safe place, and those are with simply listening. We start with listening. Being able to have someone that may have had that life experience or have been a caregiver for someone, a loved one, and that's how they've gained their experience, and just reaching out. Often we provide those resources, those supports to families, parents of children who are getting older and parents are getting older. And we want to, ensure we're giving support, peer support, not only for the individual, but also for the families. And there's peer supports for both. And not everyone knows. And that's the most surprising thing is, we have so many resources out there, but people don't know what they don't know. But once you reach out and you get connected that one time, and part of that concept of peer support is that walk alongside. If someone can be there just to make that connection with you, even that one time, walking through that door with you, in a lot of cases, that's the connection that's needed. That's the peer support, and then they have a new resource. They have a new support. They have other people that understand and can relate to them. Peer specialists are able to model, because they've gone through their own recovery, still going through recovery. Recovery is ongoing. Whichever pathway is chosen, and there's so many pathways, and helping to understand the different pathways and respect the different pathways. Not all include treatment. Some it's maybe just support. But a peer specialist is going to be there alongside no matter what. Be there to model some social, emotional skills, model problem-solving skills, communication skills, and conflict resolution. But just to be there to respect the boundaries of what is going to be helpful for that individual and for that family. And that can differ for everyone. What works for one doesn't work for another. And sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes we have to try again. We have to keep the feet going one in front of the other. And another concept is just being there to appreciate when someone may feel that maybe they don't need peer support anymore. And that's not a bad thing. I like to use the comparison of a personal trainer. If someone needs a personal trainer, they're thinking, I need a little bit of help. I need some help getting in shape. The personal trainer comes and they give a workout regimen, like a treatment plan, a workout regimen. They maybe walk alongside. They may be there a couple workouts. But that person is going to learn how to do that workout on their own. They're going to learn how to do that regimen on their own, which is the goal, is to be able to navigate a system on your own. and then one day may say, you know, I think I got this. I think I got this. I got the workout. I'm going to the gym regularly. And you know what? I even brought my brother with me. So enhancing those natural supports. So it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to step things down. So, you know, the concepts of peer support are really based on let's be respectful, let's listen, let's communicate, let's share our boundaries, and then we can all celebrate wellness.
Thank you for that. For those who have walked that walk where something traumatic or that type of crisis has touched their garment, he or she who knows it feels it, and a lot of times they're able to go ahead and pass that information on to others who may be too scared to open themselves up to become vulnerable, to have that conversation. The ability to connect, the ability to make a person feel comfortable, to kind of tear down those barriers that say, well, listen, you may not want to go there and open your whole life story up to that person because of where it may go. How important is confidentiality in peer support, in your opinion, Ms. King?
Well, confidentiality is super important, and you want to ensure that you have someone's permission to be able to share their information. You know, when you're working with treatment centers, you know, you have to have those releases of information. It's important for peer support to also, you know, sometimes there's peer support as a part of a team. And when you're working with a team, you know, it's important to be able to establish that, you know, we work together. There are no secrets. You know, we have to work together. There's certain things that if we discuss things, we're all here to help you. It's not one versus the other. There are times when an individual just may be more important. Be more comfortable talking to the peer specialist, but it's important to establish those boundaries when you're working on a team. If there's some safety at risk, you know, we have to express those ahead of time. Let's communicate that ahead of time to say, I'm here to support you, but I have to also put, you know, keeping safety in mind that sometimes I have to reach out. I do talk to my supervisor. And there are some things that have to be shared, but we're all here on the same team. We're here to help a person to develop skills and strength and recover. So I think that all is relative, but we do need to, you know, be careful with confidentiality.
Ms. Leonard, your thoughts on that question about the confidentiality portion of it?
I have had experiences where my story was shared without my permission. And these are some of our deepest truths. And it's a horrible feeling of violation when you're in the hallway of a mental health organization and you can hear doctors in the other room talking about clients and what they're going through. I mean, it is extremely important because trust is one of the hardest things to gain and one of the easiest things to lose. So if we don't respect people's stories and information and put that as a precedence, then we're not doing a good enough job. People would be real quick to walk away. I mean, it is incredibly hard just to walk through the doors. So if things like you're sharing isn't held at a certain standard, then there are so many people that are going without the help that they truly need.
Thank you for that. For those who have walked the walk, have been down that road of addiction, recovery, struggling with homelessness, mental illness, they know what it feels like. It's real to them. They have spoken about their truth. They've opened up. They've trusted, which is a big part of it, to trust and become vulnerable. For a person, what career options and assistance can be available for me if I had walked that walk, Ms. King?
There are so many organizations, behavioral health organizations, that are they're seeking persons in recovery for employment opportunities. Not only persons in recovery who are living with mental illness or living with substance use, but also even caregivers. And even in the job descriptions, you may see words like peer specialist, peer support, peer navigator, recovery support, Those are the types of positions where we're really looking to learn and have that walk alongside, that peer specialist. They make such a difference in being able to provide and help someone, building that trust, having someone that's been there before, a caregiver. And sometimes when even there's a family member, and maybe it's not a position that is peer oriented, but if there's a position and a candidate might feel comfortable sharing a little bit of their story, some employers really appreciate that compassion that they see, could be a great asset to enhance their organization, because they can see how an individual a new candidate would work well with the persons they're serving, mesh well with other employees. Again, it's all down to we're human. We all have a story. We all go through family situations of grief or something that has happened in our life. So there's even recovery organizations that provide training. There's professional certifications, there's trainings, there's time that employers allow for you to achieve these certifications. There's so much out there, and I love to share the word because people just don't know. They don't know that their story, that maybe at several points that have been held against them, they don't know that their story is the exact strength that someone needs to recover. And we need to let people know. We need to get that out there. So I'm here to tell you, I tell family members, it's giving them hope. Like Aisha mentioned, it's providing oh my gosh, people are shocked. Well, you mean they want to hear my story? Absolutely. Your story is amazing. You've done it. You're that hope.
Ms. Leonard, as Ms. King was speaking, I saw that you became emotional. There's no doubt that certain things she said resonated deep within you. For you to come out here and be a part of today's panel, it takes a lot, and we appreciate that, because your testimony undoubtedly will touch the lives of many who may have been teetering and wanting for so long to come forward to share their story. As a result of the pandemic, again, people drop the word a new normal. A lot of people don't like that word. However, it is the word that's being used. Do you see an increase in certain organizations, if not a lot of organizations, that's seeing the value of the program, of a peer support program, the peer support specialist? Do you think that they see the value now, especially in the heart of a pandemic, as before?
Yes, and no. Actually, I think even to this day, a lot of professionals have no idea what I do and what I don't do. Even members that I have to remind, no, I'm not a case manager. I'm not your case manager. I'm not your therapist. But they look at me in those sorts of senses because it's so hard to get case management right now. Even if you do have a case manager, they're so overloaded and overwhelmed, they can spend 5 minutes with you. They'll ask you, are you taking your medication? Great, gotta go. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they are overloaded and they literally don't have the time that it takes to spend with somebody to really talk about what's going on with them. 40 plus caseload, and every single one of those people need a lot of help. So it makes sense why the members that I work with look at me in those ways, because I'm sitting down with them doing these applications. I'm sitting down with them, going online, doing research to find out how they can get in touch with the resources that they really need, how they can find therapeutic services. If you have Medicaid insurance, guess what? You're not going to get great help. You're not going to get top quality notch services. You get what you get. And there's going to be a long waiting list to get through. So one of the biggest things that I like to share is learning how to become your own case manager, learning what resources are out there, and which ones you can get access to easily. For peer support, again, we're not professionals, but we have learned ourselves just by walking through these different organizations who to talk to, who will help, and who will just sort of stare at you and not really give you any sort of response. So I think there's nothing better than sitting around a group and really hearing who they saw that made a difference, who really worked and helped them, and who didn't, which place was easier to get in and which wasn't, what buses to take to even get to that place. Do they take my health insurance? Oh, they took your benefits? Oh, I have the same benefits, then I can go. And it just makes it that much easier to navigate when you're talking to people that are doing the same things, that are looking for the same things. So, yeah, it really helps.
There is no doubt in everyone's mind that's part of this great discussion before our session and even after our session ends, that mental health does matter. That's a statement across the board that I would love to hear echoed by everyone. There are so many, again, who are suffering from a mental health issue or have a component, but because they have not had the resources, they didn't know where to go, the trust issue, feeling of walking alone. And I can honestly tell you that as a deputy for the sheriff's office and also a peer support specialist, for those who I've had the privilege to sit one-on-one with and hear the things that's in their inner chamber that they never ever wanted to talk about to anyone else. And when they began to speak, it was always one first that they started. This is going to stay between us. Because if it's not, I'm going to shut you down. I'm not going to go any further. So that creates a barrier. But once you can get past that barrier and you allow them to have that honest conversation to where you ask them sometimes, maybe in the beginning, do you just want me to listen? Or do you want me to listen and give input? I think that's been key to this initiative that the Broward Sheriff's Office has put in place. And the success stories that have come from this has been amazing. I have never cried so much as a grown man doing this job, working in this field, to know that there are so many people out here who are just crying in silence, that are suffering. And to become vulnerable, to open up a part of yourself, I think is a big, big, big deal. And you said it. You have to thank the people that do that. It takes a lot of courage. We're human. We're not robots. Sometime in the workplace, we get inundated because of the regiment, because of that vicious cycle. It's like a washing machine. Wash, spin, and restart. We give so much to helping other people, we forget about ourselves, which brings us to the next topic. And I would like to shift a little bit, and that's self-care. Self-care is something that a lot of us are now really starting to come into our own, because now we hear people say, listen, I got to love on me because I'm loving on everybody else, and who's going to be loving on me? That's when you start really feeling those feelings of isolation and walking alone. And I love the word, walking alone, because there are a lot of us who have walked alone in different parts of our life. So with that being said, Ms. King, what is self-care, and should I know about it?
Well, self-care is, how are we taking care of ourselves simply. We have to, think about how are we feeling today. We have to acknowledge that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to have a check-in with ourselves, our loved ones, our children, our coworkers, even us on the panel. We're checking in with each other earlier today. And we have to recognize that, we need to do what we can to feel better. We're having our check-in to see how we're feeling emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually. How we can recognize triggers within our day, how we can improve our balance between our work and our personal life, what we're doing when we're recognizing our blood pressure, we're recognizing the stress level building, what we can do to take care of ourselves. For some of us, it may be disconnecting. We're in that pandemic world. We're in that remote world. We're all on our computers watching this summit virtually today. How many of us are watching this summit? And how much, and have that other screen up where we have our emails that we're trying to respond to at the same time, allowing us to truly be able to, disconnect. Being able to be a part of an event like this. We're listening to the panelists. We're listening to people sharing their stories. We're listening to something that we can relate to. But what can we do to look inside and say, what can I do? What can I do differently? How can I take care of myself? What am I going to do starting today after work? Maybe I can go for that walk. Maybe I can go on the beach, journal. For me, I go to baseball, But what we can do to truly take care of ourselves so that we can help to be effective to those we're serving, those we're trying to help, most importantly, our family and our loved ones, being able to really focus on our own wellness, being effective in doing that. And sometimes it's just taking that time out and so that we can help ourselves to be able to do what we need to do well.
Well received. Deputy Hall, as a law enforcement officer, working as a homeless outreach specialist, what are some things as a caregiver and an outreach worker, or even advocate, can you do to promote healthy self-care for him or herself?
Well, so some of the things that we can do is actually separate ourselves from the actual thing that is going on as being a caregiver for that individual. I will share with you and the panel, I once was a caregiver for my mother, who actually lived with congested heart failure. And to actually see my mother go through the process in which she had to go through, and talk to her and take those vacations with her, knowing that these would be the last vacations that we would take together. And one of the things that my mother explained to me, and she told me, she said, well, Marcus, we're here. There's something I want to let you know. And I said, what is that? She says, well, and this was fairly new at the time. It was an artificial heart. They called it a VAD. And it's there. A lot of people, it's come a long way. And we discussed it, and she said it was something that she wanted to do. And I gave my support for it. But now going through that journey, now we were living here in South Florida and had to travel to Central Florida in order to have this procedure completed. And it didn't go all that well when my mother had this procedure. And there were some things that were discovered when she was opened up. And when the doctors came to us, they explained to us, I thought the worst of the worst had happened. And he said, but no, your mother is alive. She's still alive. However, she's not out of the woods. And I sat there with this deer in the headlights look. And I was thinking, what you mean not out of the woods? And my mother actually had to be left open. And the reason she had to be left open is because all of her organs had swollen. And they had to give time for those organs to reduce in size, the swelling to go down. Make a long story short with that, we overcame that. And when we did overcome it, we faced a new set of obstacles with this device. And at that time, I was going to college, and I would travel back and forth every weekend. A lot of individuals didn't know that I was traveling back and forth every weekend and going to see about my mother and taking care of school and things of that nature. But I remember one thing an individual had told me. He said, Marcus, and he didn't know what I was going through, but he said, Marcus, sometimes you have to be selfish for yourself. And I had to sit back and reflect, what is it that he's saying when he says selfish for yourself? And it clicked. We give and give and give. And we have to separate in order to recharge yourself. And that recharging is very important, because if we don't recharge ourselves, then we get consumed with the other individual's responsibilities and we neglect ourselves. So we can't neglect ourselves, because if we neglect ourselves, then we can't care for those individuals who need us. So,
Well received. Compassion fatigue is a word, or words that a lot of people didn't know about that has come up in recent conversations when you talk about giving so much of yourself and feeling that person's pain and almost walking their journey with them. Maybe not physically, but you're thinking about them to the point to where you can't sleep. You're consumed by their pain, their struggle, and their crisis. When you're avoiding the guilt and highlighting positive moments in your day, and you're gathering the strengths from others by joining a support group or talking to others about your experiences, are they important? And if so, why, Deputy Hall?
They are important. They're very important. Because what the individuals may be going through, or what you may be going through, I'm going to use what you may be going through. Going through in life, you have their guilt. You want to avoid the guilt. Because if you don't avoid that guilt is going to pull you down. And you can't allow it to pull you down. You have to look at the positive of what is going on and surround yourself with that. I've actually found even sometimes in the negative, there is positive. There's a small percentage of positive, but what can I do to turn that small percentage of positive into something big? Because I will tell you, I'm an individual who likes to give. I'm an individual who will lend my shoulder for an individual to sit there and cry on and listen to. But with that, you got to look for the positive. You also need to find support groups or someone who you can talk to, just like you lend yourself to someone else to talk to. Because it's important that you also, as a caregiver or advocate or a case manager, you have to have someone, yourself have to have an outlet. Because if you don't have that outlet, like I said earlier, with my mother's situation, it will become a downward spiral for you. It becomes like, it's what you just mentioned, compassion fatigue. And it's important for you to take care of yourself and to look for those positive. And those will be healthy things for self-care.
As you say that, it comes to my mind this question, Deputy Hall. Is it important for an outreach worker or caregiver who is calling for someone in crisis or caring for someone in crisis or with a mental illness to find ways to separate from their roles as a caregiver or outreach worker? Is it important?
It is important. Very important.
How so?
It's important because, like I said, if you don't allow that, you're going to become consumed with it. And once you become consumed with it, that starts to become you. You take it on. And you're taking on that individual, whatever they're going through, you're starting to take it on. And it does become a part of you. When you go home, you're not thinking it's there. Or when you're talking to your spouse or you have your children and you're thinking about things that you may be going through or they may be going through, and you're saying, why am I so frustrated? Or why is it that I cannot sleep? It's because you have consumed it, but you have to be able to let it go. You do. And some individuals, I don't mean to cut you, but some individuals may say, well, if you let it go, then are you somewhat not caring about the individual? It's not that. You do care about the individual, but you care enough about the individual that you have to know when to let certain things go. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Ms. McDonald, what are some key issues that relate to the stigma of mental health within our society that can create a barrier towards people seeking help and living their full purpose?
Well, we've heard throughout the day on the other panels and the keynotes talk about stigma, and it is something that's so pervasive in our society. When we think about physical health, or when I ask somebody about, give me some phrases that comes to mind when I ask you about being physically healthy, you tend to hear positive phrases and positive words. You tend to hear, oh, you got to eat right, you got to make sure you get sleep, you got to diet, exercise, and physical activity. And then I'll ask the same group of people, tell me some words that come to mind when you think about mental health. And instantly it shifts, right? You hear very stigmatizing words that have a certain type of connotation that isn't always taken in a positive light. You hear about disorders and illnesses. You hear words like crazy and insane. And I always repeat to the groups of people that I ask these type of questions, the same things that keep you physically healthy are the same things that keep you mentally healthy, right? But society has set our minds up in such a way that mental health has such a negative connotation, when you still need to eat right, exercise, make sure you're getting your sleep, but the physical health things are tangible. And so we can see when somebody isn't physically healthy, and so we instantly are understanding and empathetic, because I can see the bruises, I can hear you coughing, I can see your appearance has changed. And those stigmatizing thoughts and pervasiveness in our society creates these barriers, because if all I'm hearing when it comes to mental health are these negative connotations, then that fear of appearing vulnerable, that fear of appearing weak, that fear of appearing disordered or having disorderly thinking keeps me from reaching out for the help that I may possibly need in that moment, because I don't want people to judge me. I don't want them to call me those names. I don't want them to think that I'm like those people. I come from a small country where I am only knowledgeable of one mental health institution in the entire country that I'm from. And there is a very definite negative connotation that is associated with the name of the institution. It's Bellevue, right? And when you hear somebody say Bellevue, you instantly think, oh, you're one of those. So if I'm somebody who's just developing problems, I haven't even been diagnosed as yet, and the only idea and thought that I have about getting services is associated with something that my society believes as such a negative institution, I may not even seek out for the early intervention I need before I start to develop even more issues and concerns. And so it's so important that we have peer specialists who are destigmatizing these issues and concerns. We have opportunities like this where we're sharing the information and spreading awareness. Even myself, as a clinician, I may not disclose to my clients, but every time I give presentations, I talk about my 2 mental health diagnoses. And somebody asked me one time, they're like, why would you tell people this about yourself? And I was like, well, I tell people really easily that I got asthma, because if I'm climbing some stairs with you and I start breathing heavy, I'm gonna be like, it's my asthma, I'm sick. And so if I wake up and I'm having a bad day today, I'm going to tell you it's my depressive symptoms, because this is an illness that I live with, because we have to talk more about it, build more awareness to destigmatize what society views mental health as.
Thank you for sharing that. Language does matter. And I think a lot of people, even prior to our session here, they talked about that, and it's true. We have to become more sensitive. The things that we not only do, but the things we say. In time, people can forget your name. They can forget what you've done, but they will never, ever, ever forget how you made them feel. And that came from someone, and I think we all know Maya Angelou. So, God bless her for having that sight and vision to come up with that. During the past year, there's been an increase in mental health concerns, as so many individuals and families have been facing a variety of psychological stressors. What are some coping strategies that you would recommend for a healthy recovery process in dealing with the new normal? And I know a lot of people don't like that word, new normal.
I hate that word.
It's a word that people use. So
every time I enter a Zoom and somebody says that word, I cringe. Every time I get an email, in this new normal that we're facing, I cringe, because I don't want this to be normal. This should not be anything related to normalcy that we just accept. We need to get past this. But this past year has led us through so much. When I talk about trauma with people, I always say that trauma is very individualized, right? It's subjective. What is traumatic for me may not be traumatic for you. we can grow up in the same household with the same parents, and I may be affected by it differently than somebody else. And so our coping skills that we develop has to be subjective as well. Our coping skills, and we talked about self-care, should be things that I know will be effective for me. My sister is very holistic, very earthy and grounded, and tells me to do yoga all the time. And I'm like, that ain't gonna work for me. I'm so sorry that I am not a yoga type of person. I have tried it. The only thing I'm interested in is goat yoga, but only because I wanna see the goats, not for the yoga part. And so when we're thinking about coping skills and coping strategies, it has to be what will work for you. Self-care, you said it. It is not selfish. It is important to take care of yourself. Mother RuPaul, an icon to me, says that if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love somebody else, right? And when we think about the cars that we drive, many of us, when we're driving our cars and we see that gas tank going down, I'm a paranoid person that's always afraid of getting stuck on the highway. So as soon as it goes past half, I'm like, oh my God, I'm out of gas. My husband drives it to the E and goes, oh, I'll get gas in the morning. That does not work for me. But many of us, we're refilling our gas tanks of our vehicles before it ever gets to E, yet we're waiting until we're burnt out, and then we're like, oh, so exhausted, I'm burnt out, I need self-care. Oh no, you should have been refilling at the half, because we can't keep pouring from empty cups, and we're giving and giving and giving, and we don't have anything for ourselves. So what are coping strategies that work for you? Well, what is a spiritual coping strategy that works for you? Are you faith-based? Are you more spiritual? What is activity that you enjoy? I like to ask people about their hobbies. Like, what hobby did you do pre-COVID? What hobby have you picked up during COVID? What works for you? What makes you feel good? What do you enjoy? I like cooking because I like to eat. So it's a necessary thing, right? But I like cooking because I'm like, there's a benefit to it afterwards. And this works for me. I have friends who are like, I have to get my weekly massage. And I'm like, ugh, somebody touching me. No, can't do it. But if it works for you, do it. Find that thing that gives you joy and makes you happy and is for you. Because if we're not using these coping strategies, our bodies and our minds start to deteriorate. And your coping skill doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be something you need to spend money on. You can just go stand outside and let that sunlight help your body produce more serotonin. That is a coping skill, getting more sunlight throughout the day, because we're stuck all day inside on our computers working, right? Binge watching Netflix. I give myself space and time to TikTok. I'm a TikToker now. I don't make videos though. But that's the only way I could relate to the teenagers. So I learned to go on TikTok, and I give myself, I know, don't say I'm gonna go on TikTok for 5 minutes, because I'll look up 40 minutes later like, how did I get here? So find what works for you. Find what makes your life better and what is positive and healthy for you. Whether it's exercising, yoga, binging on TikTok, or eating yummy foods. Do it. And find ways to cope, because this periodic normal that we're going through, it's been hard, and we have to find ways to overcome.
Indeed, it has been hard. It has been hard, and we talk about hardness, we're talking about the trauma, how people's lives have been changed forever, the loss of loved ones, the feeling of guilt of not giving your loved ones the flowers while they were here. There's a host of emotions that run through our mind. And again, we're human, and we're not perfect. And when we talk about a healing period, how can we promote healing for trauma in our community, especially in regards to the vulnerable population? Your thoughts?
So I said that trauma is subjective, right? And it's individualized to that person's experience. But except for this pandemic has been a collective trauma that we all understand on some level, whether from the health pandemic and being affected by what's been happening or knowing someone who's been affected, whether from a financial pandemic, loss of income, loss of employment, worries about your finances, or even just a social pandemic. There's been racial uproars, there's been political uproars that have people so divided. Healing has to be subjective too, right? The healing has to be what works for you. And you have to look at the healing not from a trauma-focused lens, but from a strength-based lens. What strengths do I have that can be empowered within me to heal and overcome from what I'm going through? Because I keep hearing people say we're all in the same boat, and we are not in the same boat. We're going through the same storm, but some people on yachts, baby. And I'm jealous because my little rowboat over here, but at least I got some oars, because some people are on planks like it's Titanic and only one person can fit on the door. And so what type of healing do these people need? What is going to apply to this person? And for some, it may be therapeutic intervention. It may be medication assistance. It may be going into a rehabilitation facility, because that's where their healing has to start. And then some individuals may not want that type of intervention and healing because of stigma or because maybe they tried it and it didn't work for them. And so you have to come from a holistic perspective. What holistically can you apply to your life that will work for you? I know so many people who have such strong faith base, right? And people think it has to be one or the other. I either have my faith or I have therapy. And I'm like, why not both? I'm going to pray with you, whatever your belief is, during therapy, and then we going to work on the mind, right? And so we have to make sure that we're applying and encouraging the type of healing that is applicable, especially for vulnerable populations. And I see a question for the audience about, like, how do you address depression and mental health challenges with seniors? The seniors in our community are definitely a vulnerable population. We're going through a phenomenon they call the silver tsunami, meaning for the first time in our country, we have the highest rate of senior individuals because, lo and behold, technological and scientific advances, people are living longer, past year aside. But people are living longer in general. My grandmother is 93 years old and still FaceTiming. And I'm like, how? Right? And so when you think about individuals like seniors or other vulnerable populations, individuals who are disabled, individuals who are marginalized, what works for them? What can we apply for them? What can we do to make sure that we're addressing their needs and their concern in a way that they'll accept, instead of trying this one-size-fits-all trauma-focused lens and saying, listen, I know how to do trauma because I did this certification, so I got it, and not listening to the voices of the people who need that help.
So important to listen to the voices of the people that need the help. And that's well said. And when you alluded to the question, how do you address depression and mental health challenges with seniors? If I may, Ms. King, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's important to understand the cultures, the age group, what was deemed acceptable in years past. Things are different, and we have to understand and be relative to understanding the cultures, the age groups, the connectivity. A lot of seniors were of a time that maybe they wouldn't reach out for help. Things were kept in the home. Things weren't discussed. So we have to be mindful and appreciate those things. I wanted to mention as well, as far as peer support, is that peer support is available for all ages. I mean, in all areas. Aisha touched on, there's different pathways in different places. The one really amazing concept of peer support is that I can meet someone wherever they're at. A peer specialist, peer supports, they can go to the person on the street, on the treatment center, in someone's home, assisted living facilities, detoxification centers, acute care units, the state hospital, within the jails. We have implemented a system of support where we can touch someone wherever they're at. And I think that's really important for the seniors, that it may be difficult for them to leave the home. Then we'll have to work in a more recovery-oriented manner where we're meeting someone where they're at. And sometimes that's shifting and changing the way we're doing things. We're trying to operate away from a crisis model, but more of a wellness model. How do we keep people well? How do we teach people to take care of themselves so that we can minimize those crisis situations? And I think that's important, is to share the information that we want to be able to customize and tailor that treatment for that individual, whatever age group, the culture, provide that education. You mentioned language matters. We're providing a lot of education in the community for how to communicate. There's some terms even that have shifted and changed. We're talking about more strength-based language. Helping individuals that may be addressing themselves in a negative way. You know, we don't use the words addict anymore. We don't use crazy anymore. These are individuals that are having symptoms. It's a part of an illness. And so we need to educate individuals themselves as well as treatment providers. And that goes to all levels of an organization. That's who's answering the phones at the front desk, that receptionist, up to the case manager, the administrative staff. We're providing that education so that we can help people recover, expand that wellness and recovery for every age group.
You have any thoughts that you want to add to that?
I do. One of the important things, too, with our senior population, and we have such a large one because everybody moves to Florida, right? Is that a very important symptom of depression and mental health challenges that you look for as a clinician is how isolated the person has become, and how, whether it's them individually isolating themselves or whether they have felt isolated from others. And when you think back on the past year, we have been involuntarily isolated, not from personal choice. Some of us, yes, but because we have to, for protection and for safety, especially our senior population. And so here we are considering isolation as one of the main criteria of so many mental health challenges, and people have had to be isolated. And so many of our senior population live on their own. I have a friend who's Bubby in New York. She lives in a senior facility, and they were only able to leave their rooms last month. That was the first time in over a year. And he was excited because Bubby dressed up. 94 years old, and she had the diamonds gleaming to go down and play bingo. And so what's so important is that how are we finding ways, that connectivity, to still be able to connect to people despite being isolated in our homes, being apart from our loved ones, being so far in distance. And I mentioned my grandmother FaceTiming, right? Because baby girl had a party for her birthday in July, and we FaceTimed and we were able to party with her, and she got up and she danced for the camera. And I was looking at it and I was like, I know people that still can't mute on Zoom, but she could FaceTime a party. Good job. And so finding these ways, technology has allowed us to be even closer with each other. And I have so appreciated the privilege I have to have access to technology during these times. I've attended baby showers, baby gender reveals, had a couple weddings. It was interesting. I had to have my own open bar in my house. I was like, not the usual type of wedding, right? There's just been so many events that we were so afraid that we were going to miss throughout this past year, that we were still able to find that connection through technology. And so when it comes to individuals who are living in isolation, who are vulnerable by nature of age, by nature of disability, or just by nature of the current social circumstances, how are we finding ways to still connect with them in ways that we aren't normally able to? just been so important, and that's part of the self-care and the coping that I promote to each other, right? I never was a FaceTime video chatter. I don't need people to see me. I'm in my house. You don't want to see how I look. And now I'm doing it while I'm cooking dinner, while I'm dealing with the kids, while I'm doing all these activities, because it makes me feel like you're here still. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that's so important for us to promote, because we're exhausted, right? Zoom fatigue is real, but in our personal lives, we still have to find ways to reach out to those, especially the people that we know are the most isolated.
You're absolutely right. When you talk about connecting and meeting a person where they're at, in your field, Miss McDonald, or correction, I'll go to Miss Leonard. In your field, how important is that to you, and to have that and get to that successful outcome?
As far as connection?
Absolutely, and meeting them where they're at.
Excuse me. I think not everybody's going to be on the same level. Some of us have had more opportunities in life, or more education, or more support than others. So it doesn't make sense that we would expect everyone to be on the same level. Everybody has the ability to learn and to adapt. Everybody has gifts and purpose that can be found. So when we spend the time to share what we've learned with another person, and vice versa, it's this mutual respect and understanding that we both have things that can help one another. And to come at it in a place of like non-judgmental. It's not fair that I have this understanding. Why don't you? Like, you must not be educated. You must not be ABC. It doesn't make sense. My life has looked very different from yours and from anyone in here. So just having that respect for another person, that, they've lived their lives and have their own needs. And when it's met with that non-judgment, how amazing, how beautiful that can be, because a person will truly flourish. When there isn't this fear associated, a person can really experiment, can really grow, and they're more willing to learn. They're more willing to step outside those boxes, because it's not I'm above you. We're all in this together. I have things that I might excel at, but another person doesn't. But when that's combined, when I'm bringing things to the table and another person's bringing things to the table that I might not be gifted at, what a beautiful thing that can be. This sort of Care Bear approach. I like to look at my team as a bunch of Care Bears. There's the Grumpy Bear and the Lucky Bear and the Happy Bear, and Cheer Bear. Yeah, we all have things that we can bring to the table. And just because somebody doesn't have understanding that I have, it doesn't mean they're any less worthy or capable.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Ms. McDonald, I want to go back, because you talked about the separations and the divisions that are going on as a result of the pandemic, and how the approach is, and even dealing with the eviction statuses and things like that. It's come full circle almost, and it's going across the board at an increasing rate that people are alarmed. You mentioned fear. Now, what are some cultural considerations that are important when working with ethnic minorities as it pertains to behavioral health concerns?
Well, one, I always like to say I'm so grateful I live in Broward County, right? Because people in Broward County were spoiled. And I didn't realize this until I had to move to North Florida. And I was like, oh, this is the South. In Broward County, we have such a diversity in ethnicities and races from so many different parts of the world. And when I talk to a lot of the professionals here, I always stress the importance of how culturally aware are you. I never talk about cultural competency because I used to teach those trainings. I still teach them sometimes, but it's a misnomer. You can never be truly competent about anybody's culture. I'm not even truly competent about my own culture. My parents talk about some things and I'm like, oh, word? Cool. I don't know that. Because there's a generational divide, right? And so cultural awareness is so important, especially when dealing with the most marginalized in our community, because there are systemic barriers that contribute to their mental health concerns while also keep them away from being able to accessing services and treatment. And it is important that when we are working with those individuals, how culturally sensitive are you being to that person's experiences? How culturally aware are you of what their traditions or backgrounds might be? I remember I used to have a client when I used to go into the homes to do treatment, and every time I got there, her mother would offer me a plate of food to eat. And I found a way around it. So I was like, no, I just ate. Oh no, I'm so full, I can't. So she would offer me something to drink. And I used to have supervision with my supervisor, and every single supervision, I would bring it up. And my supervisor was like, oh no, ethically, oh no, you cannot, you can. And after a few weeks, I stopped my supervisor and I was like, oh no, you don't understand. I can't keep refusing this family. It is an insult for me to go into their home, be offered meals or drinks, and tell them no. And she didn't get it. She was like, no, but ethically, our board says, and I was like, I'm going to tell you real quick, I can't keep telling them no, because that is their cultural norm and the way that she is trying to welcome me into her home. And I remember the next time I went there, I said, you know, I'm so full, but I'll take it home with me. And she wrapped it up, foil papered it. And all of a sudden, all the individuals that I had previously tried to engage in family therapy that kept refusing came out of the bedrooms, were sitting on the couches. Let me tell you this, miss. And I was like, you see, the minute that I accepted their cultural norm, they were more engaged in treatment and services because I showed that level of awareness and sensitivity. And so we have to constantly make sure we're enhancing ourselves. Somebody said earlier, like, ask the questions if you don't know the answers. Don't depend on that person to educate you all the time, though. Google is free 99. Like, I'm going to tell you once, I'm going to tell you twice, but the third time you're going to look it up yourself because, but make sure that we're building that level of cultural awareness and cultural acceptance that this person's beliefs and traditions may differ from my own. So how am I learning? How am I accepting it? And how am I making sure that my biases aren't coming out to play when I'm dealing with individuals? Because that's what keeps dividing us as a society, is that I hold on to my beliefs and my biases, you hold on to yours, and we are just not accepting each other at all. And I don't want to cross that line. And sometimes it has to be, okay, we're going to agree to disagree. Unless it contributes to oppression, I will never agree with you then. That's where I draw my line. Oppressive beliefs have no place here. But how am I going to show you that acceptance despite it all?
There is no doubt that there is still work yet to be done in terms of bridging the gap. Having the compassion, the empathy, putting to the side your own personal beliefs, how you see the world through your lenses. Everyone is different. The pandemic has certainly opened us all up to that. We would like to think so. I want to go to a question from the audience. And here the question is, what's the best degree to study mental health for law enforcement? What's the best degree to study mental health for law enforcement? Deputy Hall, would you mind answering that question, please?
When it comes to that question, what's the best degree? There's many degrees that an individual can take. But the one thing that I found that is the most important one is actually developing the partnerships that we have here in Broward County in order to help the individuals and serve the individuals of Broward County, because they're going to be able to tell us what it is that they need so that we are able to meet them and meet their needs, because that's the most important thing. You have to be able to listen to the individual and listen to what they're asking for in order to help that individual, because If we live in Dade County or we're in Dade County, their needs may be much different than the needs of the individuals in Broward County. So I would say we need to go to our partners, our community partners, and also go to the members of the community to see what it is that they need so that we're better able to assist them. And that's what I would say.
There is certainly value in partnership and collaboration, without a doubt. And when we talk about having a successful continuum of care, and for those who are out there in crisis trying to find their way on top of their own trauma and situation, we need to really ensure that we have this healthy working relationship with our partners, those who really have taken up the commitment to go out there and make other people's lives better. It's not easy. It's a challenge. It requires people who are in it for the long haul and for the right reasons. And I can say this, as we talk about the peer support, as we talk about career options, as we talk about self-care from others, I want to leave people with a message in terms of hope, because I think hope is important, because there are many people who feel hopeless and who feel helpless for different reasons, but the feeling is still the same. In your profession, in your field, as experts, how important do you see yourself as being an advocate for your client base, for what you do? And I'll start with you, Ms. McDonald.
How important do I see myself?
As an advocate.
As an advocate? I don't know if I see myself as important so much so as the people who are willing to get the help as important.
Let me rephrase that then. How do you see the role?
How do I see the role? So I've shifted. I used to be direct care, and now I'm the director of training. And it was important to me when I was a therapist. I thought I was going to change the world because I had to help every single person. Every single client I went into the jails for, every single person I saw in the courthouse, every home I went in, I was saving your life. And when I shifted to training professionals, I was like, oh, shoot, I'm not just helping individual people, now I can help the system in able to better help the people. And I think of my role right now as more widened, a broader perspective, and an integral perspective in teaching issues like racial awareness and racial trauma, trauma-focused concerns, because we have to constantly be enhancing our skills, our knowledge, our awareness to be able to better serve those who are in need, because they're crying out for help. And here we are just high-fiving them. You'll be okay. And so we have to be able to make sure that we're navigating this way in such a manner that we can provide the best services that people need.
Thank you for that. Ms. King, your thoughts?
I think that it's a shared responsibility. The connections that we create, the connections we need to create, enhance us coming together. We're all advocates. We are responsible for ensuring that when someone is in need and reaching out for that help, or maybe not reaching out, but we can see that maybe they might need that help, that we take that initiative to ask, see what's going on, see if they're okay. If we're not sure of what to do, that we reach out and see maybe there's someone else that knows what to do to put the pieces together. I think that a key component of advocacy is to ensure something comes full circle. I think that being able to make sure that connection is made, make sure that that person has ability to get to the place where they need to go. If it's a facility they need to go for an assessment, is it feasible that they have a way to get there? Is it feasible that the time frame given doesn't conflict with a childcare or a job being put in jeopardy? Or hours even. Sometimes a person needs to have a therapy appointment at 7 p.m. Then we need to find an agency that has services at that hour. I think that, it's our shared responsibility as connectors that makes us stronger, that builds our strength, that builds the strength in the individual, to make sure that circle is closed. And those that work with me know that I want to have the circle closed. Sometimes that entails extra phone calls, extra hours, extra time. Things don't happen before 5. So I think that we're all strong advocates.
Thank you for that. As we wind down our session, and it's funny that you mentioned connection and strength. How fitting is that? I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your life, especially in the midst of a pandemic, as the world is so uncertain, as there's a lot of pain and suffering, but we're doing our best to heal and help as many people as we can. In closing of our session, I'd like to thank our panel, the Sheriff's Foundation of Broward County, and all of you for attending our virtual 4th Annual Broward Mental Health Summit. It takes a lot to get up here and pour your heart out, to share information, because you don't know how it's going to be received, but you hope that in doing so, that you will reach as many people and have a positive impact as possible. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Broward with a new outlook on how to manage life. It was a privilege for all of us to oversee this event, and we expect to see you next year.
Today you heard from 18 panelists and 2 guest speakers. In their messages, we're sure you found spirit to bounce back from a difficult year and that you feel empowered to tackle challenges in life, which we all have.
Remember that there is help and that you have the power to be resilient. There is help out there. You are not alone. Thanks for spending some time with us today, and we'll see you at the 5th Annual Broward Mental Health Summit. Can't wait to see you.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
You guys are
Done.
the
We did it.
best.
4 years of this, ladies.
COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to make changes on so many levels. Feeling alone and isolated is something that we've all felt, and not knowing what to expect has made life a lot more challenging.
Just as our bodies need to be fit, so do our minds.
And the best part, there is no cost if you're covered by Medicaid or health insurance. If you're not, there are flexible plans that can adapt to your family's needs.
All you need to do is call 1-888-587-0335 or go to the Chrysalis website and fill out a referral. A Chrysalis specialist will walk you through the process.
If you're struggling, reach out. Work through what is holding you back so we can all start a bright new school year.
Businesses are a reflection of their people. When employees feel happy, supported, and appreciated, business is just better. We're UKG, and we're in the business of building connections through the world's best HR and workforce management solutions. It starts with people. Everything we do is inspired by people. We learn from them, find opportunities to empower them, and look for ways to put smiles on their faces by helping them make the most of what makes them special. Whether it's their talent, their families, or their culture, it's people who power us to create solutions for our customers that reflect our belief that taking care of each other is the best way to connect with each other. It's this belief that drives all 12,000 of our people to build connections with millions of employees in thousands of businesses, in dozens of industries all over the world. We're UKG. We're more than a business. We're a reflection of our people. And what we see really puts the smile on our face. UKG. Our purpose is people.
Mental health is everything. I'm committed that we live in a world where mental wellness is equally as vital as physical wellness. For those people that think that mental health challenges should be stigmatized, I think they're absolutely wrong. We must break the stigma. We must do everything we can to come together as a community to highlight mental health resources and eliminate the stigma. I'm Scott Brook. I'm the father of 5 beautiful kids. I'm the mayor of Coral Springs, have a family law firm in Coral Springs, and I'm an advocate for mental wellness.
My name is Sataria McMorris, and I am a Miami VA Peer Support Specialist. I work here in PRRC. I've been here for over 6 years. And when I think about wellness and what it means to me, it means my renewal and my recovery, going through life, finding my different pathways and finding successes, overcoming barriers, learning how to integrate with my friends, my family, my community, as well as teaching and helping other veterans like myself through trauma and learning that they can overcome and become anything they would like to.
my name is Clarence Office Jr. I'm a mental health specialist at the Miami VA Hospital. This is Broward County Mental Health Summit, and I wanted to talk about what mental health wellness is for me. It's a holistic thing for me. It's your mind, your body, your physical health. All of this means wellness to me. If I don't have all these things intact, I can't be of service to anyone else. So my priority is like self-care and making sure that I'm well mentally and physically and emotionally.
Hi, my name's Kathleen Keeley, and I'm the local recovery coordinator at the Miami VA. And I have the opportunity to help everyone understand that mental health gets better. What mental wellness means to me, it's not the absence of mental illness, but rather the opportunity to pursue your best lived life, to choose what you'd like to choose.